Yeah, and we are live. Hey, Rich, how are you doing?
Hello, hello. Here we go.
All good.
All good.
The Phillies they crushed the Broncos on the weekend, right?
No, they did not. The
No,
Phillies lost at the very last bit there. Well, the Eagles that was, and then the Phillies also lost. So they both. It was not a good weekend for sports.
really, the Eagles lost.
Yeah, they lost.
I saw they were
They
like
did.
crushing.
They were doing really good, and then they choked at the end. So
No way, what
yeah,
happened?
they
Oh
just
my
they
God!
choked. That's all I can say is they choked.
Whenever I saw they were like a lot up to like three, five, I believe. Yeah,
Yeah, it wasn't pretty. That's for sure.
that's gnarly. But anyways, hello everyone, and we are live for
We are
another,
live.
conversation with Rich and I. And this, you already know this is it's everything around like where every voice matters and every story has a seat. We just get together and we talk about a bunch of cool stuff from philosophy, culture, business, economy, global affairs, stuff that is happening around the world, sports, and you name it, right, Rich?
Exactly. Yeah. It's all that. All the above.
Exactly. And for today's conversation, we have a great topic. We're going to talk about trendy topics around the world. And obviously, where to begin, right, Rich? So, technology and AI is right now on the top charts everywhere. They talk about in Egypt, in North America, Bloomsburg, and like everyone's talking about it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It,
What are
it's
your
it's
first
it's
thoughts whenever you hear about technology and AI nowadays, Rich?
well, it's exciting. I think because I'm a technology geek to begin with, but on the other side, there is some concern of how things are going to go because we know that AI is going to change the work industry. Now,
Hmm.
that doesn't mean that work industry is going away. It just means it's changing. And when there's a change, that means there's going to be loss of jobs and then gaining of jobs. Unfortunately, there could be though some time in between, which is the scary part. Um, but I think a lot of companies are going to try to keep people learning in their jobs and going on with it. We just it's going to be a wait and see in some cases. But I would number one, I as I've said many times on our conversations here is you gotta play with AI, learn AI, understand AI because it's here, it's not going away, and if you are in any type of work industry, you should understand it just because you don't know when it's going to be hitting your front doorstep.
Yeah, and that's very interesting because what you just said reminds me. I believe everyone's gonna remember that Charlie Chaplin, video from back in the days. Let's say episode. Whenever he was like in the factory and he was like tying screws, and he went home and his hand was like still tying screws. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's the same thing with the AI. Whenever industrial revolution came around in 1929, everyone said the same thing, about machines and the jobs and the factory workers and so on.
Well,
What
even when
happened
computers
is,
came into play and all that, there was a concern there that jobs are going to go away because computers could do more, and that's exactly the same thing. Now AI can do more. So it's the issue is
exactly.
there, but the what people kind of forget, and it's easy to forget when you're in these spots, is that when these types of things come in play, new things start to create become available. So new technologies that are going to create new jobs, new needs are going to be there. There's not
Mhm.
going to be it's not as simple as AI is just going to do everything. If AI could just do everything, that would be probably a wonderful place, because then we could just let that
Yeah.
run our world for us. But the reality is it can't. It probably will be a long, long, long time before it could actually do everything, or even in what some people might say take over the world. It is centuries away for that, because there's just too much control that we have already that it can't take over that stuff, and it can't learn that stuff. And the reality is, from everything I've ever dealt with in AI, and what everyone pretty much knows about AI, it doesn't have any creativity. It just can basically churn your information and give you things that you need, but does not have that human creativity that is needed.
Yeah, and I believe that's the greatest paradox, right now. Because everyone's talking about like AI, AI, AI. But if you like really look really deep into the tech, it's actually like a machine learning. So, like you said, it doesn't have the advanced structure that we have. That whenever we face a problem that's never been faced before, we can come up with a solution. The AI right now, it's basically just a lot of things indexed with a different front end. It's basically, Google search, but obviously you get a different user experience on the responses, and obviously a lot more automation, so it can create even like Google back in the days cannot create anything. It just gave you the answers. Right now, with the automations that started with Chat GPT, for example, it creates the answer for you. And I believe that's a huge leap that we're gonna do work wise, around the globe, more performance, the deliveries are going to increase. And obviously, as happened on the industrial revolution, we're going to have more time to focus on the more strategic part of the roles, like strategy, planning, executing, and let's say like Charlie Chaplin episode, the heavy part, it's gonna we're gonna leave to the machine,
Exactly.
and I believe that's like the fear. It's just the same old story come all over again,
It's there's always going to be that fear there, because people start to think the worst, and change always makes them think the worst. So
Yeah.
there's always going to be that fear there whenever a change is happening, because the change is an unknown spot.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And obviously, it's a new world. A lot of things are going on, because whenever we go into global economy, geopolitics, and everything, the whole world is changing, And obviously, AI and a bunch of other stuff are leading the way, So it's not just AI who's changing the world. It's everything that is happening, And
Exactly.
obviously that takes us to our next topic, Whenever we see inflation worldwide, it's you know almost all-time high, you know. Here in Brazil, for example, every week almost that you go to the supermarket, you buy less and less for the same amount that you bought last week, so
Yeah. That is so true.
so the tricky part right now is I was watching another data on Bloomberg a few days ago, and 10 years ago 75% of the students that left college, they were hired within 2 years. All right.
Hmm.
Now that number dropped to less than 25%. Can you believe that? You know? And the tricky part is whenever you talk about those kind of environments, that's macroeconomic, so it's not just one thing that's going to drive that number to go down so drastically. The same thing happens with inflation, with works. You know, a lot of people
Mhm.
are unemployed right now. For example, it's not because of AI, it's because of a bunch of different things that
Mhm.
happen, and that they you know, what we're seeing today, what's happening today, it's a result of things that happened like 5 years ago, you know, but
Oh
they
yeah.
just take time to kind of roll it out, you know what I mean? So what's your view on that, Rich? What's your forecast about what's happening on the global economy?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right that that a lot of the things that we see are delays from past years. Everyone thinks, oh, it's going to show right away, but it doesn't. I mean, that's why there's the politicians out there are always fighting about what a bill is going to do because it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to change right away. So you might see nothing happening and think, oh, well, that there was nothing wrong with that. But then 2 years later, it kicks in, and you go, what happened? And that's the problem with these things is a lot of stuff like that is delayed like that. And same thing with the economy and all. You know, you have a hiccup in the system, and it might take a month or two. Just like when the tariffs went into play, we saw everything was good for a little bit, but then now we're starting to see that hiccup coming through where things are getting higher and prices are starting to get bad, and that's the hiccup that we were thinking, oh, it's we got past it. No, we didn't get past it. It's just gonna come through.
Exactly. And it's funny, you know, because people normally they don't realize how big and complex this will is, you know, because
Mm-hmm.
whenever you think, all right, so hey, this year, for example, I'm gonna use me as an example. I'm not gonna buy a new TV, you know, and by not buying a new TV, that brand is going to sell less TVs. Selling
Mm-hmm.
less TVs, whenever they realize they're going to cut down production. And
Yeah.
whenever they cut down production, their HR is going to, you know, cut a few people because, you know, they're producing less. And that guy who, you know, got cut off from the factory, he's not going to buy a new car, you know, this year. And the manufacturer, you know how far that goes down the line. So
Yeah.
the things that we're seeing today, it's stuff that's happening, you know. So whenever we discuss about global economy, we gotta look to data like 5 years ago. All right, so
Oh yeah.
what happened 5 years ago? Who were the presidents? You know, how was inflation? How was the rates? You know,
Mm-hmm.
the taxes back then. You know, and that's when we
I
kind
think
of.
a perfect example is COVID was 5 years ago, and we are still seeing effects from that with products and stuff like that because it did not just stop overnight. You know, once even things started moving again, it takes a while for things to get back into a proper cycle of stuff. And that's where we don't, you know, a lot of people don't realize that cycle is broken, and it takes a while for it to pick back up.
Definitely. And what's your forecast? What's your guesses like? What do you see for the future ahead regarding economy and geopolitics?
I think for a while we're going to have some rough patches because of all the bouncing that we're doing. I don't see how it's going to be as smooth as some people think it would be. It's going to definitely hurt in a lot of ways, and um, it's going to be a global hurt that's going to happen because it, you know, everything's going to shift, and things are going to move around, and you know, in some cases, some areas might do better from it because they might gain new contracts and things like that they never thought they would get. So that might be good for those areas. But then there's going to be other areas that are having a loss. You know, we have
Uh-huh.
in America, we have some farmers out there that are struggling right now because they can't sell things. You know, and that, you know, in other countries are selling in place of them because they took advantage of a situation and said, "Oh well, then we'll sell it." So
You mean like grains and stuff like that?
yeah, like soybeans and all. Yeah. So,
Got
yeah,
it.
because we were a big exporter of soybeans, but we got our tariffs were so high that it made it hard in some cases. And then I believe it's Venezuela, I believe, that has also a good stock of it and turned around and sold a bunch of their soybeans. So that,
Brazil as well.
and Brazil as well, exactly. So those countries are taking, up a new contract that they didn't have before. So that's good in some ways for them, but then it's bad for America.
That's very interesting. Yes, and and I believe for the future forecast, we're just with everything that is going on around, with tariffs and stuff like that. Because here in Brazil, you guys, you're gonna be amazed by this perspective, Rich. Because here in Brazil, we obviously are have always our heads up for what's happening in the U.S., in London, for example, because you know you guys lead the way in everything. So if there's inflation in the US, here in Brazil we can expect that in a year 2 or 3 years we're going to have inflation as well, because it's going to pick up to us, you know so
Exactly.
that's very interesting. And that also leads to everything that is rich.
A glitch of the system. So
Are you there?
can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. There we
You're
go.
back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just the system glitched out on the
No worries.
background thing. So no big deal.
A little instability, but we are here.
Exactly.
That's and I was saying that leads us to our next topic. The culture and the global events. For example, this year we're gonna have the COP 30. And it's gonna be in Brazil, in a town north, extreme north of Brazil called Belém. It's part of the Amazon rainforest. It's almost the tip of Brazil, and we're talking about the agenda. Uh, what else? We have Canada's federal election, and for the first time ever in history, an African country is going to host the G20 meeting. That's never seen before. And obviously, United Nations is talking about, it's raising the flag for justice and human rights. Again, like we said, it's not just AI, it's not just politics, it's not just economy. It's what's happening all around the world, with the wars and whatever. You see, like in Venezuela, in the Ukraine, with Russia, in the African countries, because if you see a lot of people that are just moving around, and with this move around, that changes a lot inside of those countries because you have to need more jobs available, and those jobs that, for example, were taken, now they might go to those immigrants because normally they afford to have to be paid less
Hmm.
under their circumstances. You know what I mean? So, what's your view around this culture and global events, Rich? What's on your
There,
mind? What do you?
I mean, between the way everything is shifting around and the the issues that we have in immigration in all countries, not just our U.S., but all countries have some form of an immigration issue. And I don't think it's the issue of people moving into another country as much as it is an issue when there are some of the bad ones. But there's not that many. We hear over and over again, oh, there's all these people that came into America that are bad. The reality is that that's not true. But that's what they say, and that's what they're using their campaign on. And then you have jobs that they were doing, they came in the country and were doing, and they're not able to do or afraid to do. And a lot of them were coming in somewhat on a legal way to do those jobs, and then they went back home to their country. So we're basically hurting all these situations because we're closing out a door that we didn't realize even was actually working properly all along. And that's happening. I see it around the world where there are countries having the same issues because they're concerned about it. And then you have someone saying, "Oh, all your countries are having major issues, and you should be closing your borders." That's not a global economy, and that's not going to help the economy if you do that. There needs to be that work together, and we need to start to look at it in a different way. It's not about our country is better than your country. It's about how do we make it better around the world.
Definitely. Yes, and that's a very interesting topic because, on the COP30 in the Amazon, one of the main agendas is energy industry and transportation. I believe because like the world is getting bigger and bigger by the day. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So we got to be able to live in a sustainable manner, like energy wise, like the prices of energy right now is just going up, up, up. And obviously the, like say, the cost to sustain that, like dams, they are not sustainable anymore because
Exactly.
otherwise we just need to have like state large dams, to produce the energy needed for the world, So that's on the top of the agenda for the COP, And obviously industry and transportation, like hey, they're looking to triple the renewable and double the efficiency
Hmm.
because right now as well, whenever we see those large cities such as New York, LA, oh my God, the traffic over there, it's like
Oh yeah.
unbearable at times, You normally, you, there are routes that you take like 2 to 3 hours, to go back and forth to work. So, what's your thought around this agenda, Rich?
Yeah, I mean, transportation is huge. I mean, there has to be a better way of getting around than everyone having their own car. There, when everyone's going to the same place at this, all pretty much the same time, like a stadium event or something like that, cars just are a nightmare to have. And you got to have other forms of transportation to help with that. And that's where cities are failing right now because they can't afford it, but they should be able to afford it. They should be putting money in that direction, but they don't want to, and that's the struggles that we're constantly having is figuring out what's the right way and how do you balance that cost as well, because it does cost, but is that cost a better thing than having all the people on the roads and all the cost of the road care and everything else? So there's like a give or take there somewheres.
Yeah, and that's and I believe and a good example of on how world the world is no it's concerned about this is a project called the Line. Have you heard of it, Rich? It's in
Isn't is that
Saudi
that's the one?
Arabia.
Yes, that's the building, right?
Yes, yeah, it's a 300-mile long building, and it's called the Line. And the main reason why it was designed to be a line because of the transportation inside of this city, because by being a line, they say that you can go to one end to another one in 30 minutes, you know, with no traffic, with nothing, So that's how much they are concerned of the logistics inside of this new kind of cities, Can you imagine 300-mile long, 30 stores high? This is like a fortress of a city, And
Yeah,
obviously they are preoccupied with logistic, transportation, renewable energy, and so on, So that's
that's
amazing.
it's going to be a pretty interesting project, but that's how if we're going to ever go into other worlds and stuff like that, we need to understand those things.
Exactly, exactly. And and that, that's the future, like communities. Because again, in my point of view, obviously I might be wrong, but it's just my thought around this. For example, let's use housing as an example, right? If we had good quality logistics around those big centers, why the real estate normally values? Because it's supply and demand, right? So whenever you have a good spot that is close to everything, to the big centers, to the financial district, such as Manhattan, for example, the prices go up because
Mm.
everyone wants to live there, because you're close to the work, you have everything around you, and so on and on, with a good quality transportation. Doesn't matter where you live, like the cities kind of be more environmental friendly, and again, and that's my thought for the future. I believe we're going to see a huge change around communities, worldwide. They're popping up here in South America, North America, Central America, Asia, Africa, Saudi Arabia, and so on and on,
And those communities are important. I mean, and that's the thing. There's how those communities develop are even more important because as they grow together, they can do so much more together. If they don't get
Exactly.
along, or you have a community that is not supporting each other, then you start having bigger issues, and we see that all over the world.
Exactly, exactly. And that's what we're doing. If you like this conversation, if you want to keep talking about this kind of topics, with depth, with quality, you know, like a space for thinkers, you know what I mean? Me and Rich, we have created this amazing social network called Corners. It's available for iOS and Android. For example, you can join us in a few minutes at the World Corner. Just download the app, tap, find corners on the bottom menu, and jump on the Nook, and here we are. It's really designed to be this cozy video chat room. It's limited to 9 people because it's really, supposed to be like a chat room, and that's where we meet and that's where we have good conversations. We have all different kind of corners, like Wisdom and Wonder, the Lounge, Global Affairs, Rainbow Connection, Atlanta, Chic and Style, and all sorts of different communities,
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And that this is how communities start to grow together because we can talk to each other from around the world and create a different type of community. Because communities aren't always meant to be just your next door neighbor. Communities are groups that work together to improve life.
Exactly. And all right, so if you're, looking for this new experience regarding social networks, we see you at Corners. Great talking
Hey
to
Ashley, we
everyone.
see you there. Hope I'll see you over on Corners in a few minutes. And everyone else, please join us. Love to have you over there. Let's have some fun, and then we'll see you again on Thursday at 12 noon.
That's it. Thank you, Rich, for such an awesome conversation. And see you guys at Corners in a bit, in a few minutes. All right.
See you all.
Cheer, everyone.